What's up guys, this is Miasin, and today we will be going over what I personally believe are the top 10 best decks of the format post-BANLIST, but also before Supreme Darkness, because I do believe that set will be changing things just a little bit. And I usually do tier list videos instead of these kinds of face-to-face videos, but I only have 10 decks to cover, and I really wanted to go in-depth with all of them, so that's the reason why I'm making it this way. Before we go any further though, there is something I would like to promote. So my sponsors InspireTCG are hosting a double box tournament tomorrow on Dueling book with a minimum of 12 players and a maximum of 20. It costs $15 to enter, and if you're interested, please join their Discord server, which will be the first link in the description box. Once you're there, you're just gonna have to message an owner for the payment link and entry confirmation, and you'll be good to go. With that said, let's dive right into it. So in the number 10 spot, I would put Yubel. So I think the deck got a huge downgrade ever since we got crossover breakers, because the best decks, they can all play a bunch of hand shops. But to be fair, I think Yubel became not necessarily unplayable, but drastically worse ever since we got Furos and Dominus Impulse, because those cards are nasty against the deck. Yeah, sure, your engine can religiously beat one hand shop every single time. The second hand shop, maybe not so much, and the third hand shop, usually that kind of kills you. In a world where people can play like 20 hand shops, the maths are actually statistically speaking against you. Now, opening of the Spirit Gates back to 3 is a really nice consistency boost, but it does come with strings attached because Phantom Yubel is also now at 1. So personally, I used to only play 2 Phantom Yubel, so realistically, I only lost 1 copy, but still, most people will see it as losing 2 copies of a card that they always used to summon and also use as link material to keep extending, and for them, this is a huge downgrade. But to be fair, if you're good at resource management, it's not the end of the world, and if you get to use your field spell to recycle back your Phantom Yubel, you technically never run out of Phantom Yubels. I do plan on making an updated Yubel combo video and deck profile, so stay tuned. Anyways, number 9 will be Voice's Voice. It's a low ceiling deck, but the floor of the deck is actually not too bad, and it also plays Dominus Purge, which is incredible in a Raziel format. It also doesn't lose to Molchemy Foros and doesn't really lose too hard to Molchemy Perolia, which is also very good. Not to mention that you can also play Raziel cards in Voice's Voice, but you don't really have to. You can also play the Nadir Servant package, which is not only good at breaking boards going second, but also generating tons of advantage. Unfortunately, Voice's Voice is kind of weak going second, and unless you draw like 2 hand shops, there is pretty much no way you win. With that said, the deck still deserves a spot in the top 10. Now, I'm gonna have to put Pure Kashtira at number 8 because just like Voice's Voice, it can also play a lot of hand shops, and it can play Dominus Purge, and it does not lose to Molchemy Foros at all. It does lose a little harder to Perolia though, so keep that in mind. The deck is insanely simplistic, so much so that even when you draw the picture perfect hand, you aren't doing much of anything. 2 Kashtira cards and 3 hand shops looks as ideal as it gets. The deck has its share of pros and cons, and I think it's relatively well positioned into the format since it doesn't really lose to hand shops, and it can also play a lot of hand shops. It doesn't lose to Furos, it doesn't lose to Shifter, etc. Now, number 7 is Labyrinth, but only if you play it a certain way. So I have mentioned this in a couple of videos before, but I basically said that the Labyrinth deck, if you want to play it, you're gonna have to do something relatively similar to what the guy that got second place at YCS Osaka did. And he basically played like a trap heavy build, but with 13 hand shops and 3 RES to turbo out Dimensional Barrier and Karma Cannon. I think it is the absolute best way to play the deck because now you win going first and also going second. Because honestly, without any hand shops, you really feel defenseless against Detonator and especially the Malice board. And it's not really like you can count on cards like Sphere Mode against them because they really just end on like 1 or 2 monsters. Now, number 6 is Ritual Beast. The deck can also play Shifter, but it really loses super hard to all the Molchemies, which is very annoying, and it has other kinds of weaknesses. The good news is it can abuse the shit out of Protoss, and that card is extremely good in this format, especially if you can call the Light attribute. So if you can call Light, you not only shut down every single Feedsmith card, but also half of the Raziel engine, which is very detrimental to their strategy. I mean, all they can really do is normal summon Sword Raziel, and then special summon Sword Raziel, and then make like a duo drive, and then special summon a Node Raziel, and then revive back another monster. Not really do much else other than that. And then obviously against the Malice deck, you just call Dark, and you always have access to it because Protoss itself is a Dark attribute, so that's Happy Land. Now, another bad news with the Ritual Beast, of course, we're never done with those, is that it loses really hard to Lancias, so it suffers from collateral damage of the existence of Malice being around. Now, in the number 5 position, I will have to put Mermail because of how powerful and consistent it is, but also because of how good of an investment it is. So in Supreme Darkness, the deck gets Presagera the Rumbling Atlantean, which is extremely good going second, especially against Raziel. But even at the current moment, it is still a very good deck that can beat multiple interruptions. The issue is it folds to Shifter, Drool, and the Molchemies, at least in game 1. It also has a super tough time against Abyss Dweller, so unless you play like specific anti-Dweller cards such as Exceedon Core and Forbidden Droplet, you will suffer against Raziel. Then again, in the right hands, the deck can achieve wonders, and I've seen it with my own eyes. Definitely recommend looking into it though, and it will stay relevant for a while. Number 4 is a deck that is almost identical to Mermail in some regards, and it's Memento. So just like Mermail, it is also a deck that loses to Shifter, but I think it loses a little less hard to Droll and the Molchamis. So the issue though is that it has to play less non-engine, at least if you want to maximize your consistency, and that can be a little unfortunate for going second. It's still a great deck, obviously, don't get me wrong, but one of its main advantages is the fact that people really don't know where your choke points are. I always see people who are unsure on what they should be hand shopping against Memento, and the deck really loves that. Okay, so number 3 is a deck that recently saw a huge boost in popularity, but isn't new at all, and it's Fiendsmith Kashtira. Again, the deck plays Dominus Purge, but I do believe that it is the best deck to abuse that card because it plays other hand shops and also a lot of other starters, and there's just no conflicting whatsoever. It's overall super annoying to face if they draw well because both the Kashtira cards and the Fiendsmith cards are really good at beating hand shops. So that combined with the fact that they play tons of hand shops themselves definitely doesn't make your job easier going second. And the thing is, all their hand shops are different since they basically play 2 decks, so you never really know what to expect. Look, any deck that can play tons of 1-card starters and tons of hand shops is kinda destined for success, and that deck's focus is basically just playing a bunch of these cards. So number 2 is Malice, and even though the deck is probably the highest in this list in terms of power level very specifically, I think it has other flaws. It passes turn to Lancia, it has consistency issues, it seriously struggles with Nibiru, it is inherently weak going second, etc. But it still deserves to be number 2 because it can play a lot of non-engine cards, which means there is a lot of room for creativity. At YCS Anaheim, we saw a bunch of players do well with the Kashtira engine in their deck and also the Sky Striker engine. So granted, you fix your weakness by knowing how to deck build to be Nibiru and Raziel going second and also max out on consistency, Malice can be a great option for you. And also a terrible opponent for you if you're playing against the deck. Last but obviously not least is the number 1 best deck of the format. It is a tie between 2 different builds of the same deck, and I would have to say it probably goes to Pure Raziel and Fiendsmith Raziel. So Pure Raziel plays more non-engine cards, but it also has less consistency cards since you only really have 12 starters, and then you got, I guess, Desirous, Prosperity, and Small World. And then on the other hand, the Fiendsmith build doesn't really care about any of these cards, but it does play the Fiendsmith engine, which are just a bunch of 1-card starters. So even if you draw 0 Raziel cards in your Raziel deck, you're not necessarily screwed because you can even draw like a Luri, for example, and that's still not too bad. Just with any Fiendsmith starter, you can make a half board and also set up an infinite grind game while also having a graveyard effect that can be really annoying for you in the form of Paradise to send the DS E-Ray. And the deck is naturally good going first and second because you play a lot of engine cards, so it just always baits interruptions very well. And it still plays an acceptable amount of hand shops, which means that going second, you're not gonna get FTK'd. Personally, I think the deck gets really hard carried by Ice Raziel because that is by far the best starter in the deck. But then again, you're still playing a pure Raziel deck when you're drawing X. Just a little inconvenient how you can quickly get locked under your level and rank 4 monsters when you use the in-hand summoning condition of that card, but whatever, it's not the end of the world. Anyways, that's all I had for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think of this format in the comment section below, and what do you think will be the top 10 best decks of the format. And I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.